Do12 is on the posterior midline, below the spinous process of T3. Do14 is on the posterior midline, below the spinous process of C7 in a depression.
Bladder 1 is located 1 fen medial and superior to the inner canthus of the eye. If a person scrunches up their eyes, a nice depression forms here, and that's where you're going to find bladder 1. Bladder 10 is located 1.3 sun lateral to Do15. It's 4.5 sun from Do15 to the mastoid process. So divide this area into 3 and just come a little closer to the posterior midline. You'll be on the lateral edge of the trapezius muscle. Stomach 2 is located 1 sun inferior to a pupil looking directly forwards. To find this point, you'll need to stand directly in front of the person, palpate inferior to the pupil by about 1 sun, and you should feel a dip, which is the infraorbital foramen. Don't press too hard though, because there's a nerve here and it can be quite tender. Stomach 3 is located inferior to a pupil looking directly forwards, level with the lower border of the ala nasi. To find this point, you need to stand directly in front of the person, have them look forwards, think of a line running through their pupil and coming down, and marking this point on a level with the inferior border of the ala nasi. This point is frequently just lateral to the nasolabial groove. Stomach 7 is located directly superior to stomach 6. Palpate upwards until you come to the zygomatic arch, and then come back down until you fall into a dip that is just anterior to the condyloid process of the mandible. Stomach 8 is located directly superior to stomach 6 and stomach 7. So run your finger up in a line from stomach 6 and stomach 7, projecting up onto the corner of the head until you're in a nice depression just superior to the temporalis muscle. Gallbladder 1 is located very approximately half a sun lateral to the outer canthus of the eye. Palpate laterally to find the lateral orbital margin. Mark your point just on the edge of that orbital margin. Be careful not to move back into this fleshy area because there are other points here. Gallbladder 4 is located 3/4 of the distance between gallbladder 7 and stomach 8. Gallbladder 14 is located above the pupil looking directly forwards, 1 sun superior to the eyebrow. To locate this point, you need to stand directly in front of the person, Have them look forwards. Remember the distance from the centre of the glabella to the anterior hairline is 3 sun, which would enable you to calculate your 1 sun. You can locate this point in a dip that's formed when the brow starts to come away from the skull. Gallbladder 15 is located at the midpoint between Do24 and stomach 8. It's half a sun into the anterior hairline. Gallbladder 16 is located on a curved line joining gallbladder 15 to gallbladder 20. It's 1/3 of the distance from gallbladder 15 to gallbladder 18, which is on a level with Do20. This makes this your gallbladder 16. To locate gallbladder 20, palpate up the groove in between the sternocleidomastoid and trapezius muscles. As you get to the base of the occiput, you will find a nice depression. Gallbladder 20 is in the centre of that depression. Large intestine 20 is located in the nasolabial groove, level with the midpoint of the ala nasi. The ala nasi is the nostril. So find the superior border of the nostril, the inferior border of the nostril, hence the midpoint, and come out into the nasolabial groove.
Large intestine 4, you're going to find the length of the second metacarpal bone. So running your finger down, finding the base, making sure that you're not actually on the carpal bones themselves, finding the midpoint of that shaft of bone, coming between the first and second metacarpals, nearer to the second than the first in the muscle. Large intestine 5 in the anatomical snuff box. I'm going to ask Laurie to extend his thumb under resistance, and that brings the snuff box into relief. And just relax. I'm going to articulate the wrist to find the deepest part of the hollow now it's relaxed. And I'm going to put my point in, which is in between the two tendons of extensor pollicis longus and brevis.
Large intestine 11 is located at the midpoint between lung 5 and the prominence of the lateral epicondyle of the humerus. Typically, this is at the end of the transverse cubital crease when the arm is fully flexed. Lung 9 is located on the lateral aspect of the wrist flexure, in between the radius, the scaphoid, which is one of the carpal bones, the radial artery, and the tendon of abductor pollicis longus, which is this big tendon that can pull the thumb out. So find the dip between all those three landmarks and the radial artery and mark your point there.
Pericardium 7 is on the flexor aspect of the wrist. It's level with heart 7 and between two tendons, palmaris longus and flexor carpi radialis. Some people don't have this palmaris longus tendon, in which case you'd just be going ulnar to this flexor carpi radialis. So finding heart 7, articulate the wrist, coming between those two tendons, that if you can't see them, you can get the person to join their thumb and their little finger together, and that will highlight those two tendons. And just relax again.
Bladder 58 is 7th sun directly superior to bladder 60. It's often described as being 1 sun inferior and lateral to bladder 57, but that's not always the case. Bladder 63 is located in a depression which is proximal to the base of the 5th metatarsal. Palpate posterior to the base of the metatarsal and you will find a nice dip that's just inferior to the lateral cuneiform bone. This makes the point slightly superior to bladder 64. Bladder 62 is located half a sun inferior to the inferior border of the lateral malleolus. It is located posterior to the perineal tendons. To bring the perineal tendons into relief, evert the foot. This is the perineal tendon here. When the foot is relaxed, the point can then be marked behind it. Stomach 36 is located approximately 13 sun superior to the prominence of the lateral malleolus on the anterior border of tibialis anterior. The easiest way to find it is to palpate down the tibial tuberosity. Find the base of the tibial tuberosity and move slightly laterally until you fall into a nice dip on the anterior border of tibialis anterior. This point is also 3 sun inferior to the inferior border of the patella. Gallbladder 42 is located on the dorsum of the foot in a depression proximal to the junction of the heads of the 4th and the 5th metatarsals. If you articulate the metatarsals, you can easily palpate the groove in between the two bones. This point should be located medial to the tendon of extensor digitorum longus, little toe branch. To show this branch of the tendon, pull the little toe out. It's normally quite visible.